Whoa, you're on here too, Zuko. Twice. Sokka turned to Aang's voice, looking from the poster to the firebender. Zuko was, as usual, sunning himself, face turned to the sun. Sokka doubted that he would ever really stop doing that. Going without something for years could make it so that you would never take it for granted again. The firebender looked to Aang, turning his face away from the sun to eye the wanted poster that the Avatar was pointing at. Sokka turned back to the posters as well. One of them showed the blue spirit mask, tucked into Zuko's bag. Under the drawing were the words, "Wanted, dead or alive," non-bending anonymous swordsmen who aided in the escape of the Avatar at Pi-Ho Stronghold. The other poster was made in a slightly different style and showed an image of a younger Zuko, next to what supposedly was an artist's rendering of his current age. Only one of those is a wanted poster, the firebender said, nodding to the blue spirit image. What's the other one, then? Katara asked. It's a notice of banishment. I'm not wanted? I'm just not allowed on Fire Nation territory. Aang and Katara blinked in surprise, and Sokka noted for the first time that Zuko was carefully staying on the other side of the notice board. Banished? Katara asked. But Zuko had moved around and was looking at the Fire Days Festival poster again. Sokka stepped forward and put his hand on his sister's shoulder. He hadn't told the others what Zuko had shared on their fishing boat during the storm, but it wasn't something that he would share lightly. Zuko's life had been hard enough, but he wasn't about to start spilling the other team's secrets. Zuko would tell them about the banishment, about the scar, about Ozai when he was ready. Katara bit her lip, but shared a glance with Aang and looked down. Sokka suspected that they had talked about something serious during the storm as well, but he wouldn't ask while he was keeping Zuko's. I guess that means we can't go to the festival, Aang said, drooping. Not necessarily, Zuko said in the I'm about to do something stupid and destructive because I have no sense of self-preservation, but it's going to be awesome voice that was too familiar for Sokka's heart to take. This was going to be a bad idea. Katara and Aang, who were not as well versed in these Zuko voices, and therefore uncomprehending of the terrible decision that was about to be made, both perked up. The Fire Day Festival is a masquerade. A what? Everyone wears masks. It's traditional, a way to symbolize that when it comes to fire, everyone is equal. The noble and the pauper get burned the same, so it doesn't really matter who's behind the mask for the night. It doesn't work like that, obviously. The nobles have masks worth thousands, and some of the less affluent have homemade masks, but I always thought the concept was profound. The teen's fingers brushed past the left side of his face in what could have been a move to brush his growing hair back, but Sokka knew it wasn't. He spared half a second to hate Ozai especially hard. I don't know, Katara said. Even if we do wear masks, it seems dangerous. I think we better keep moving. I have to learn firebending at some point, and if Zuko can't teach me, then this could be my only chance to watch the masters up close. Sokka winced and glanced at the resident Fire Nation teenager. He still couldn't make fire, and he could get really testy when anyone's mentioned the possibility that it could be a permanent issue. Luckily, the other team wasn't paying much attention. He was looking at the Fire Day Festival with a hunger that had previously been reserved for orange melons. I guess we could go check it out, Katara allowed. Sokka wanted to protest, wanted to say that going to a fire town on a fire day of fire was a horrible idea. But he hadn't seen Zuko look so excited since he had said he was going to get him out of the cave. Plus, Aang was sitting in the biggest puppy dog gaze his already big eyes could muster. Sokka didn't stand a chance. Fine, but we're wearing disguises and laying low. Zuko's grin was blinding before it fell off. I shouldn't, he said, voice laced with regret. If they recognize me, they could legally kill me for being on colonial land. Pretty sure that goes for the same of all of us, buddy. Sokka slapped him on the shoulder. Hasn't stopped us yet. We'll leave if things start to look like trouble. Zuko snorted, but allowed Sokka to maneuver him back toward the bison. This was how the Water Tribe team just knew how excited the bender really was. Usually a move like that would have been involved with a lot more yelling and insults. Because we always leave before there's trouble. the scarred teen said sarcastically, but moved to pull his mask out of his bag. Exactly, Sokka said with a bright smile, happy that Zuko absolutely sucked at lying. He wanted this so bad. Aang was happily bouncing beside the Fire Nation teen, excitement shining through him in a much more traditional way, though his enthusiasm honestly wasn't much more obvious than Zuko's. I hope the band is good. Has dancing changed a lot? My friend Kuzan taught us some traditional Fire Nation dances, but those are probably pretty old-fashioned by now. We don't dance anymore, Zuko said, awkwardly casting an apologetic glance toward the younger teen. Fire Lord Azula unbanded, except in plays. Oh, Aang said, deflating. Sokka grimaced. It was hard to cheer up Aang after he'd been forced to remind of how different the world was. Don't worry, Aang, Katara comforted, and Sokka relaxed. If anyone could bring the Avatar out of this funk, it was his kind, compassionate, caring sister. I'm sure that Zuko would just love to learn some of those dances from you after the festival. Learn a bit about the lost part of his culture. You should teach him. Wouldn't that be great, Zuko? His kind, compassionate, caring, evil sister. Zuko grit his teeth, clearly about to start on a record yelling session, when a single stream of water rose from behind the girl, menacingly. Sure, he bit out between clenched teeth. Aang perked up fully. That would be awesome. I would be like a master, a dance master. Oops, here comes the yelling. Time to deflect, time to deflect. Sometimes he wonders if the cave did something to his hearing. That or he was always this kind of yelly, which is kind of terrifying to think about. Hey guys, we should probably start heading down. Don't want to miss too much of the not dancing. Zuko slid the blue spirit mask over his face before pulling the hood of his cloak over it. Stay here. I'm going to go get the mask for you. But it wouldn't be smart for you to go into town until you have them. Not with those posters out. Cool, Sokka said. But, are you sure that makes sense for you to go into a town as a wanted felon? It's a Fire Day festival. The Blue Spirit is a popular folk figure. I wouldn't be the only one there. It'll be fine. He turned and stalked down the hill to the town before Sokka could argue anymore. He could barely think. In the air hung the litany of songs he knew the tune of since before he could babble. He'd done this one for his first Toonsan horn recital when he was 8. Every breath he breathed came back with a tint of smoke and a hint of spice from the fireflake vendors and the roasted meat spikes. The town's light bobbed and danced, a purposeful display rather than the bobbing of wild flames. He felt like he'd been starving and finally getting fed. He felt like he was finally seeing sunlight again for the second time. It was like he was finally home again. And 100 yards away, there was a banishment notice warning him away on pain of death. He felt anger building through him at the thought. A fury so fierce that the fact that flames still couldn't come had sent him into a panic that he had starkly ignored. Zuko had to fight off a sneer even now, remembering how in the aged-up side the artist had been lazy enough to just put a scar across the portrait of his father at 16. He was somehow surprised that his father even allowed the small allowance as Zuko was his son. Zuko watched a pair of children in red running past with sparks shooting from small sticks, and allowed his joy at being at the festival to distract him once more. He was relieved to see that he wasn't the only blue spirit in attendance, and quickly stepped up to the nearest mask vendor. He chose the mask that resembled the 3 companions that often accompanied the blue spirit, hoping that would hide him more, and quickly made his way back to his 3 friends? Traveling companions? Whatever, he gave them the mask. Part of him wanted to go into the legend of the blue spirit and his companions, explain the characters as he handed the mask to the appropriate person, talk about a legend so iconic that not even the Ember Island players could mess it up. He didn't, biting his tongue as Aang and Sokka switched masks away from the characters he had chosen, instead simply grunting and pulling them into the festivities. They watched with wide, amazed eyes as the paper dragon raced past, its slinking long body replica of the majestic beast his family had hunted into extinction. He missed his uncle. But until he found Iroh, fireflakes would do. Sokka had already rushed the table, shoving the festival treats through the mouth hole into his mask before Zuko could say a word of warning. Not that he would have. He was appreciative that Sokka had let him out. But he had left Zuko down there for a week. Some petty revenge was par for the course. Plus, this made it even more gratifying when he reached past the gasping teen for his own bag and happily popped them into his mouth. Sokka gaped at him, and Zuko smirked before allowing himself a moment to relish in the familiar flavors of home. Cayenne, chili pepper, and pepper flakes mixed with honey and cinnamon, all fried to a crackling texture that both light and crunchy. Wow, Zuko makes that look way better than you did, Sokka, Aang said, tone accusatory. Sokka sputtered. Fire Nation taste buds must be completely fried off. There's no way you can taste anything after that. Zuko snorted, tossing back another bite before saying in a mock outrage, You dare insult the culinary might of my people? I will show you, Water Tribe. Okay, so it wasn't entirely mocked outrage, but something could be both true and a joke. Katara's eyes widened and she moved into a combat stance as Zuko stepped forward, but the Scar teen simply marched straight past her to a dumpling booth to place an order. Man, we have to work on your sense of humor, Sokka complained, accepting Katara's slight belated offering of her water skin and guzzling the cooling liquid. I like my sense of humor, Zuko protested, accepting the dumplings and doling them out. Try these, see if you're still unimpressed. Why are ours so much smaller than yours? Katara complained as Sokka popped the first treat into his mouth. Children's meal. They're less spicy, just as flavorful. Aang, yours is going to be spicy, but hopefully your Kuzan friend prepared you for that. The airbender nodded. His mom made the best spicy noodles. Sokka was chewing his dumpling consideringly. His face was screwed up in concentration. Okay, I will concede that there is one thing about the Fire Nation that isn't horrible. Zuko smirked, casting Sokka an I told you so expression, before taking a bite of his own treat. The chili-studded filling sneered into his mouth, unfamiliar after years of fairly bland offerings. He could feel his cheeks heating up and sweat beading at his temples. He started sniffling as to wake his sinuses. It was wonderful. The other three shared a broad grin. Zuko wasn't entirely sure why, but he had long since given up on trying to detangle their social interactions. Sokka slapped him on the shoulder. All right, I'm going in for a second round. Sokka, there are literally dozens of different food booths here. Are you really going to limit this to just the one? If you had told Zuko 3 years ago that he would be in disguise explaining the intricacies of the Fire Day festivals to 3 of the biggest threats to the Fire Nation in 100 years, he would say you were insane. Then again, who was to say that he wasn't insane after 3 years in that hole? All he knew was that it was nice to take 3 people who had been hurt irreparably by his nation, to see their eyes light up in wonder as he showed them how the lantern's flame moved to the music's beat, as he explained the significance of the decorations, piled them with festival teas and treats, and watched them lose the slightly rigged games. He brought them the sparkler sticks given to the children, bent over in laughter when Sokka immediately shouted, I'm a firebender, and accidentally set a flag on fire. For a few hours, precious hours, they could see the good of the Fire Nation. Wasn't that what he'd always heard the war was about? Spreading the goodness of the Fire Nation and helping people? He wasn't naive enough to believe that anymore. That lie had died along with the hope that his father ever wanted him anywhere near the throne. Still, it was nice that for one night, for these 3, he could do that. Maybe if Aang did defeat the Fire Lord, maybe there could still be hope for his people. Maybe. Aang got distracted by a group of children surrounding a puppet booth, and Zuko munched on a second bag of fire flakes as the curtain opened. Don't worry, loyal citizens, the puppet claimed. No one can surprise the Fire Lord. Zuko frowned. The puppet resembled a young Iroh, much more than it could ever resemble his father, except for the puppet's hair, to his body shape, to its accent. It was Iroh all the way. Zuko shuddered, understanding the veiled treason for what it was. When an earthbender soldier, dressed in the uniform of Ba Sing Se, where Uncle had been stationed, and Father had never stepped near, was fired by the Fire Lord puppet, the 4 stepped away, unease filling in their shared glances, though for very different reasons. Luckily, Zuko soon spotted a much more interesting stage. Come on, I think your guys will like this one. The fire juggler wasn't the best he'd seen, nothing compared to the one they came to Azula's 11th birthday party. but he was pretty good considering the size of the town. The way he mixed firebending with magic tricks was interesting, although his stage voice was a little fake. Aang nearly jumped out of his skin when the juggler asked for a volunteer, and Zuko and Sokka both immediately grabbed one of his arms and each forced him to his sides. "No," Zuko said, casting the boy's most menacing glare, which was completely lost on account the mask was covering his face. But Sokka picked up the slack admirably as he began scolding the younger boy. Unfortunately, that meant that both of them were too distracted to keep an eye on the performer before he was suddenly right there and pointing at Katara. "How about you, lovely lady?" Katara immediately started, stepping back awkwardly. Aw, she's shy," the juggler said in the same over-the-top voice. "She needs some encouragement." The crowd cheered, and a child pushed the girl forward. Katara frankly looked at Zuko, but the prince could only shrug. "You'll be fine, it's safe," he managed to mutter as the girl was pulled onto the stage. The performer quickly set up the scene for the climax of Love Among the Dragons. Not an effective without the rest of the play, but the few-second-long show was still far better than anything the Ember Island players had ever performed. His fire sculpting was magnificent, creating the image of a diving dragon on the end of a tether. The image was so effective that Zuko's grip on Aang slacked, watching the performer control in awe. That was where he went wrong, because just before the performer could capitalize on the climax of the scene, whereas he would throw himself between the dragon and the heroine, the fire image would disappear in the play and was symbolic of the main character accepting and taming his inner dragon. Here where it just looked cool. Aang suddenly leapt on the stage, sending up a whirlwind from the palm of his hands. The dragon dissolved in the twister, sending confetti flying over the crowd. For a beat, Zuko was just disappointed that he didn't get to see the actual climax. The confetti was new, and could have really added to the scene. Then he remembered they were literally all wanted criminals, and Aang just airbent in front of an entire town. He jumped to the stage to help Sokka untie Katara, just as the crowd began to boo and Aang started to do the worst dance he had ever seen. That's it. If this was one of Aang's traditional Fire Nation dances, Zuko refused to learn them. Katara and Aang could both use their puppy dog eyes, and he wouldn't budge. Right away. "Hey!" one of the townspeople yelled. "That kid's the Avatar!" It was like watching a herd of piranha dog flamingos, the way that every head in the village suddenly perked up and turned their way. Sokka and Katara dropped their masks to take in the scene, and Zuko let out a curse. "We need to go," he commanded, not touching his own mask. "And that's the blue spirit from the stronghold!" Another voice yelled as the crowd pressed in on them. Zuko cursed the fact that his swords were back with Appa. He knew that he should have brought them, no matter how odd it would have looked. He squared off into a defensive position, wrists phased and Chi straining impatiently. Suddenly, a figure hidden in layered black robes called from a gap in the wall. "Follow me. I can get you out of here." Zuko glanced between the strange figure and the rapidly approaching guards. Well, he hadn't lived this long for making good decisions. He gripped the back of Aang's orange collar and dragged him along the gap. The Water Tribe teens quickly followed behind, and soon they were following the stranger in a winding, destructive path through the town, smoke bombs flying liberally through his fingers. Aang blew frantically on the bison whistle, which Zuko personally still doubted actually worked, but whatever, as they frantically raced through the town with the soldiers hot on their heels. It seemed that every turn they made only led them into the path of more soldiers, until finally they would drive their backs to a fireworks pile. Zuko strained for his chi. A single spark in that pile would create plenty of chaos for them to disappear. But none appeared, and there wasn't a lantern close enough for him to try to manipulate the external flame. "Sokka, please tell me you bought extra weapons," he said out of the corner of his mouth as the alley seemed to be flooded with pursuers. "I don't even have boomerang." Zuko opened his mouth to reply and snapped it closed when a low groan filled the air along with a gigantic shadow. "Appa! Down here!" Aang cried. Suddenly the beast was there and the soldiers were fleeing. Zuko got it. He pretty much reacted the same, and Appa hadn't even been angry then. Now the bison slammed his tail on the ground, chipping the street and creating a shockwave that sent the nearest enemies flying through the air. Without hesitation, they all jumped on the bison. Soon they were flying into the night, safe once more. Except now, there was a Fire Nation stranger with them. Was this how Katara and Aang felt a few weeks back? He did not like it. The stranger threw a smoke bomb into the tub of fireworks, creating a magnificent explosion that lit up the sky. Okay. Zuko kind of liked him.